Hooked by a giant symbol revealed from space, Ed Kavanagh is in Australia's Great Victoria Desert.
I'm arriving at the coordinates now. This area is not at all what I was expecting.
Evidence on the ground has revealed these sands were once ground zero for a series of nuclear explosions. But to the journalist, that doesn't make sense.
Australia isn't a nuclear country, so I just can't believe that this would be happening here. Hi, it's Edward Kavanagh.
Kavanagh turns to his newspaper contacts to track down someone who might be able to shed some light.
All right, thanks.
Jeremy LeBoyce is a member of the Maralinga Djarajar, a council of local Aboriginal peoples.
Hey, Jeremy.
How you going? Good, thanks.
He confirms that 60 years ago, atomic testing did take place in this desert, but not ones conducted by the Australian government.
Where we are today is where the British tested 7 atomic bombs that were bigger than what they dropped on Japan.
In 1952, the British become the world's 3rd nuclear power and are desperate to play catch-up with the US and Soviet Union. To do that, the small, densely populated nation needs to persuade another country to host their nuclear tests.
The British government looked for testing sites in the US and Canada, but were turned down.
And then Britain knocks on the door of Australia, part of the old empire, and the Aussies go, you know what, yeah, we'll have your nukes. Let's blow up some nukes in our deserts.
In exchange for sharing nuclear secrets, the Australian government grants the British vast swaths of land for their tests. But it's land that belongs to LeBoyce and his people.
Jeremy, how much notice were the traditional owners of this land given about the nuclear tests?
Absolutely nothing. Not one of them ever sat down with the traditional owners and asked them for permission. Not one of them.
The deserts here are of deep spiritual significance to the Aboriginal people. Yet the British immediately begin to remove them from the place they had held sacred for 2,000 generations.
The connection to this land, you know, it goes back thousands of years. And they forced the people, my people, away from this country.
The British build a town to the south of the site and prepare the area for both air and ground-based tests. On September 27, 1956, they detonate the first of 7 devices in the desert. Such is its power that those watching report being able to see their own bones through their hands.
British soldiers were ordered to observe the mushroom clouds during the tests, and all they would go out there wearing is pretty much shirts and shorts.
But the troops weren't the only ones close to the blast. Many Aboriginal people remain in the desert. They later describe how a black mist of radioactive dust rains down on them. But it gets worse. Some even seek shelter in the craters formed by the explosions.
They were still living nomadic lifestyle. They didn't understand that the actual soil was contaminated.
The people who stayed behind began to suffer immediate effects of nuclear fallout, having their skin peel and several of them dying within only a few days.
It's estimated that around 1/3 of the British and Australian servicemen exposed to the blasts later die of cancer. The figure among the Aboriginal population was never recorded, but it's likely much higher.
A lot of Indigenous people are dying of heart failure, cancer. What happened here was all a secret. No one knew anything about it.
Recent investigations have revealed that many casualties of these tests gain no peace even after death. A program codenamed Project Sunshine sees authorities exhume dead children and study them for radiation poisoning without their parents' consent.
They don't tell the families. The people that conduct the autopsies are bribed to keep their mouths shut. And all evidence is basically swept under the carpet.
In 1963, the British depart. What they leave behind is a toxic landscape that has a catastrophic effect on those survivors still living here.
The cleanup consisted of just sweeping all of this debris into shallow holes in the ground, which really didn't get rid of the problem.
We're still finding stuff that's been blown up in the blast miles and miles away from the test zone.
Today, the scars created by the nuclear tests run deep, both on the land and on the few people left here.
It's appalling what I've seen out here. An entire community dispossessed of their land. Even though these events happened some 70 years ago, the community is still reeling with the aftermath.